Hey guys, I have an announcement I'd like to share with you today. I am planting a church. Now, some of you may be having the same reaction that I had when God called me to this. Excuse me? Did you say plant a church? And if you are, I do not blame you. I'm right there with you. So today I want to share with you the story of why it is I'm embarking on this journey, where we're at in the process, what we're hoping to do, and maybe most importantly, how this impacts the future, especially for Visit Ministries. So I'm going to try to keep this short, but everything will be time-stamped in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. So if you get bored, you can go ahead and skip ahead to whatever part most interests you. But I would really encourage you to listen to the story, because if you want to understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, understanding the journey that God has brought us on will really help you to do so. So here's the short version of the story. If you want the full version, feel free to talk to me in person, or maybe one day I'll make a video with all the details. But for now, I'll try to keep this brief. Now, at the beginning of 2020, I stopped working at Foothills Church, and by the end of 2021, launched Visit Ministries. Now, I'd connected through Mark DuPont with an organization called Regions Beyond, which is a global family of churches based out of South Africa. And they invited me to speak about youth outreach at one of their conferences in Missoula, Montana. Now, the first time I arrived at this conference, I experienced something very special. I could tell that this wasn't just an organization or network, but this really was a family of churches. I've never gone to a conference and felt so immediately at home and so immediately welcomed in by everybody there. It really was an amazing experience. People like Josh and Jess Yakos, Buck and Jamie Rodoff, Stacy and Ann Ratliff, Cameron and Lorraine Oliver, and many others really made me feel like I was part of the family. And I left that conference thinking, man, I really want my family to come next year and experience what I've experienced. So the next year, they invited me back to the conference to speak again about youth outreach. And that was the year 2024 that I met Steve Oliver, and everything began to change. One of the days of the conference, we had a long conversation about a variety of topics about churches and leadership and fathering versus tutoring and where he's going with Regions Beyond as an organization. But at the end of the conversation, he looked at me and asked me a question that would forever change my life. Jeremy, have you ever considered planting a church? And I genuinely was shocked at this question. I had never considered planting a church. I had no interest in planting a church. And I think I literally laughed at him and said, absolutely not. And so I told him my story, saying, basically, I failed at being a pastor and I got let go. And I was basically told that this just isn't for you and you should find something else to do. And he listened to my story and had some encouraging things to say to me. And he said, Jeremy, all cards on the table. I'm a church planter, so I always believe in planting churches. But I just see you and I have a sense that God has something more for you. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, when you plant a ministry or a nonprofit like this, you're doing great work, but usually those things only last as long as the person who founded it is around. And once they die or move on, then usually the organization stops. But when you plant a church, you build a legacy that'll outlive you. And that really stuck with me. But still, I was like, well, thank you so much for the encouragement, but I'm not planting a church. And so I went on with the rest of the conference, taught my workshop. Steve Oliver was there, heard me teach. And the last day of the conference, Steve approached me again and said, Jeremy, I had a word I wanted to share with you. I didn't feel like I could give it before, but now as I've got to know you better, I think I can tell you. And he gave me this word that I'm not going to share with you right now, but the message of the word was, God has more for you than you've been experiencing. There are more to the promises of God that you've got a hold of yet. And he said, I can't say that's planting a church, but I would just encourage you to go home and pray about what God might have for you. And so I said, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Definitely, I'm going to go home and pray. But again, I'm not planting a church. And as all this was going on, I had a missed call on my phone from Shane Blayfield. Now, Shane had no idea, but I had wanted to start a small group. I had wanted to start a unique gathering of families where we would build community, worship and pray and get in the word together. And I had told myself, I'll only do it if Shane Blayfield leads worship. But at one point I had reached out to him and asked him, are you currently doing a home group? And he said, yes, it's going great and it's thriving. And so I didn't tell him anything about my idea, but I remember in that moment that I had this thought that one day he would come to me. And I felt like I was just waiting for him to come to me. I don't know why I felt that. And so I saw this missed call from Shane. When I got home, I called him back and Shane said, Jeremy, can we meet? I have a question to ask you. We got together and he said, Jeremy, will you start a home group with me? And I was pretty shocked because I'd had this sense maybe a month, 2 months earlier that one day he would come to me. So I said, well, actually, I really want to start a home group. I have this unique idea for gathering families. And he was all on board. We said, okay, let's do this. And then I told him about the interaction I just had with Steve Oliver that weekend. I said, man, I met this guy named Steve Oliver. And Shane's eyes just got big. And I told him, man, yeah, it's so weird. He asked me if I'd ever considered planting a church. And Shane told me, he said, Jeremy, when I asked you to meet with me, my intention was to ask you to plant a church with me. But instead I chickened out and instead just asked you to do a home group with me. See, what I didn't realize is that Shane had felt a calling to church planting for several years before this. Several years back, there was a man who came to our church and taught at a meeting about church planting. And at the end of that meeting, he went around and prayed for everyone in that meeting that Shane was at. And when he prayed for Shane, Shane felt this impartation and burden for church planting. And that man was Steve Oliver. And so this was an amazing coincidence. At that exact same time that Steve was challenging me and bringing up the idea of church planting, Shane felt led to ask me to plant a church. And that same guy that had planted that seed in Shane years ago was now bringing this idea up to me, totally disconnected. And so my response to all of that was, wow, that is amazing. But no, I'm not planting a church. I do not want to plant a church. And so I told Shane, you know what, let's do this gathering. Let's start getting this group together and I'll pray about it and we'll see what the Lord does. But that's all I'm committing to now. And I just assumed I'll pray about it and then I'll tell him no again later. And so we started that gathering and it's been going great. It is such a special group of people where there is such a sense of community and love and family. And we've been loving every minute of it. And during that time, I continued to pray about church planting and finally got to the point where I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing it. I was really happy with how my life was. I was happy with my gathering. I was happy with Visit Ministries. I was happy with my family and work life and everything was great. And I did not want something to get in the way and mess it all up. And so I thought that was that. But then the next year I went back to the conference in Montana again. But before I went to the conference, I had 2 encounters with God that absolutely rocked me. I won't tell the full stories here, but the first one was at a conference in Phoenix where the Lord spoke to me so powerfully through the song, The Blessing. And the Lord made it so clear that his favor was on me, that he was blessing me, and that he was for me, and that he was preparing the way ahead of me. He was behind me, beside me, and with me. And so I assumed that just had to do with Visit Ministries, that more doors would open. And I felt so encouraged, like, man, thank you, Lord, for your favor and your blessing and that you're preparing the way. But there was a clear understanding that there was a future that he was preparing me for. Then I had another experience where the Lord made it clear to me that I am restoring you. And I knew that I had lost a lot when I stopped working at Foothills. I had lost opportunities to teach, to lead. I wasn't investing in people's lives the same way that I used to. But I just figured, okay, I'm going to get back into teaching. I figured through my gathering, my small group, that I would start teaching more and ministering to the people and families in that group more. And I was, again, thank you, Lord. Thank you for what you're doing. But at the conference, God made it clear what he was really doing. Now, there were several important things that happened at the conference that added into this whole story. But again, that'll be for another time. But the last day of the conference, I was sitting listening to Steve Oliver speak about his experience planting churches. And he told the story of the time when he got burnt out and almost left the ministry. and then how God restored him. And it was such a beautiful picture of what the church is, of what it could be. And I thought to myself, man, I could do that. Now, I didn't think I wanted to plant a church like that, but I could be a part of something like that. And then in that moment, two things happened simultaneously. The first thing was that a thought entered my mind that I felt like wasn't from me. I thought the thought, but it was clear that the Lord had put it in my mind. And the thought was, Lord, if you give me a building, I'll do something with it. And that thought really struck me. I was like, where did that come from? Like, I don't like that. Like, what if the Lord gave me a building? I would have to do something, you know? It reminded me of when I said, Lord, I'll start this gathering if Shane Blayfield leads worship. And God brought Shane to me, you know, and now this thought's in my mind about him giving me a building. And I was like, okay, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Let's forget I ever thought that. And then all of a sudden, I felt the Spirit of God fill me powerfully. And I need to explain something to you first. This whole time when I was thinking about church planting, I had this picture in my mind. And the picture in my mind was about all these things that had happened outside of me that seemed to point to God wanting me to plant a church. The seed Steve had planted in Shane, the word he had said to me, Shane asking me to plant a church, a number of other things. And I had this picture in my mind. That's great that all these things out here seem to point to planting a church, but I don't feel it here. And why would I ever consider doing this? Something I don't want to do, something my wife doesn't want to do, unless I felt the Lord call me right here. And in that moment, the Spirit of God filled me. And I felt like God showed me that picture again. And he simply pointed to my chest and said, here's the calling you've been waiting for. And it was undeniable. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't pretend that I didn't know what was happening. And I just sat there in that moment with my head in my hands, literally saying, oh no, oh no, oh no. Because I knew in that moment, I only had two choices. I could obey God and respond to him, or I could run away from him. And I know how running away from him is going to turn out. So that wasn't really an option. I knew I had to respond. And I immediately thought, how is this going to impact Visit? How is this going to impact my life? And I thought about my wife, because she did not want to do this as much as I didn't want to do this. And I knew in that moment I needed to respond, but I knew that I could not respond until I had talked to my wife. So she wasn't in the meeting with me. She was out in the lobby chasing around our wild 2-year-old. And so I went out and found her, and I walked up to her and just said, Marissa, I need to talk to you. And she immediately could see the Spirit of God on me, that something was wrong. And she said, what's going on? And I said, I just felt the Lord call me to plant a church. And I just began weeping, because I knew in that moment that I was finally surrendering to the Lord, that I was finally agreeing with him on something that I had been wrestling with him on for a year now. And so Marissa just said, okay, Jeremy, I'm with you. What do we do? And so I went up and had Steve Oliver pray for me, because he had been the one that God had used to plant the seeds, to initiate the whole thing. And he prayed for me and encouraged me and just said, Jeremy, we're with you, whatever you need. And he encouraged me to take it slow, to be patient. He said, I know the Lord has you on a journey, and he'll lead you and guide you into what he wants for you. And so that's how our church planting journey began. In April of last year, 2025, I felt God call me. I've been wrestling with him for a year about this, and I finally gave in. So I went home and immediately talked to Shane and Megan Blayfield, because Shane had been waiting for a year for me to catch up with him and the Lord on this thing. I shared the story with my gathering group, and as I shared the story there that Friday night, Josh and Amanda Simmons immediately felt called by the Lord to be a part of it. And they approached us after and said, God told us to do this with you. And then I talked to Mark Hoffman and Neil Hoffman, the leadership of Foothills Church, and we began walking down this path. For the first few months, we knew we needed to take it very, very slow. We really felt that we were not supposed to follow the normal systems or strategies for planting a church. We weren't supposed to get some church planting checklist and booklet and this is how you do it and just follow the steps and move the things forward on our own initiative. We really felt that the Lord was going to do this and he was going to do it in a unique way. And we needed just to wait on him to lead it forward in his timing. So for the first season, we just prayed and basically did nothing else. Then in November, I went to Regions Beyond's global gathering of churches in Clarence, South Africa called Legacy. And there at that gathering, God powerfully confirmed the call and we felt clear that it was time to move forward. As a leadership team, we'd been praying together every Saturday morning, but now we knew it was the time to make the step of leaving Foothills and to begin to pray together every Sunday morning. And so I informed Foothills that in 4 weeks would be our last week at Foothills. And so one of the reasons I'm making this video today is because this weekend is the last weekend that we'll be at Foothills Church. And so starting next Sunday, our leadership team will be meeting every Sunday morning to begin to seek the Lord for clarity and vision and what's next for this church plant. This isn't the launching of the church. This is just a season for the leadership team to come together in greater unity and get a hold of the Lord. We feel like God's given us a pretty unique vision for what this church is supposed to be like. From the very beginning, we felt really clear that we weren't supposed to move forward with our own wisdom or our own strategies. We felt like God was going to lead us forward into something unique that he had for us. And we've got several words powerfully confirming that that's what he wants to do. And as we've sought him, we feel like he's begun to show us what that church is supposed to look like. There are a few values that we think are really going to define our church. The first one is community. We don't want our church to be an event or a meeting or a collection of programs and services that then we try to build community around. We want to start with community. We really want to build a community of believers that love each other and love the Lord. We want this church to be a family of families. The second characteristic is simplicity. We want to strip away a lot of the extras we've added to church. And a lot of these things are very good things, but we want to start with a simple expression of what church is. We want to get past a lot of the programs and production and presentation that we do in church and just get back to a community of believers loving the Lord and worshiping together. We want this to be a simple church. And the third is that we want to be a community on mission. Now, by mission, we don't mean that we have a lot of programs and outreaches, but really that we are a group of people that have a heart to reach the lost, to reach our friends, our families, our coworkers, and our community. And that us as a community, we go out with the love of Jesus to the lost and hurting people around us. So these are just a few of the things that we're thinking in this moment. We really think that God has more to show us and more clarity to give us regarding our values and our vision and who we are as a community of believers. And if you want to know more about what we're thinking, I invite you to reach out to me. I'll go out for a cup of coffee with you, and I'd love to talk more about what we're trying to do. And so how is this going to impact things around us? Specifically, how is it going to impact Visit Ministries and the work we're doing there? And also, what's the connection with Foothills and how does it impact all of that? First of all, Visit Ministries is not going anywhere. The work of Visit Ministries continues to expand and grow. If you've been following us on that side, you know that God has given us new vision, expanded mission, and God is opening many, many doors for us. We really believe that the simple vision that God's given us for the church makes it possible to continue to do Visit Ministries at the same time, and that these two might even work together synergistically for an even greater end. So it really feels like a lot God is calling me into, the work of Visit Ministries and planting a church at the same time. But we really think this is the path that God has us on. And by the grace of God, it's all going to work towards a glorious end for his kingdom. Secondly, how does this relate to Foothills Church? Now, this is not a church plant of Foothills. It's not technically Foothills sending us out or supporting us. We really feel like the Lord has made it clear that we are supposed to be a part of Regions Beyond. But we still love Foothills Church. I've had many talks with Neil and the other leadership, and even though this isn't an official Foothills plant, they've let us know that they are excited for us. They feel like we are walking in what God has for us, and they are brothers with us as we go on this journey. I expect that we'll be serving the Lord together for many years to come in San Diego. And I need to say that I am so grateful for Foothills Church. I am so grateful for Mark Hoffman, for Dave Hoffman, and for all the people that have led me and served alongside with me for these almost 30 years now. The greatest blessings of my life so far has been to be raised up under Mark Hoffman and Foothills Church. The good biblical teaching I've received, the solid theological foundation, the love for worship and for the Spirit of God, the heart for reaching youth, and so many other things are ingrained as a part of my DNA, and I'm going to be taking that along with me wherever I go. I am eternally grateful for the role they've had in my life and for raising me up. And I am also very excited for this new season God's leading us into. I really feel like God is going to do something special in our midst, that it's not something we have to strive for or work for or try to make happen on our own initiative, but the Lord has been leading us and is leading us into his purposes for us. And to those of you who have served with me for all these many years, who have been like friends and family to us, we love you so much. I hope I get the chance to see you, to say bye to you, and to rejoice together as we go out on this journey. Thank you so much for your friendship and support. So thank you for listening to this very long video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, if you want to know more, really feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk to you. I appreciate your prayers as we take this step. It's scary. It's overwhelming at times, but I feel a great confidence in what the Lord is calling us to do, and I'm excited. Thank you so much.